fight song for the North Carolina Tar Heels, and this is the Rush the Court podcast. I'm your podcast host, Shane. Alongside me, as always, back on the other side of the country. I guess I'm back on the other side of the country, as we are used to, is my podcast partner, Randy. Randy, how's it going? Are you happy that we once again have 3,000 miles separating us?
I feel so much more comfortable not being in your hotel room, Shane. Let me just tell the listeners, I have done something that very few people have been able to do in their lifetime, and that is to get an hour and a half in Shane's hotel room. And let me tell you, folks, I wouldn't recommend it. Luckily, there was an escape valve. They had a sliding glass door
We were on a ground floor, yeah.
Yeah, mosey out of when I needed to. So no, it was good for us to meet up for a bit and do the preview of the preview, I guess, the summer off-season pod. But I'm really raring to go as far as a real preseason preview pod.
Absolutely, and we are going to get into the preseason preview stuff. But as you told me in our email when we were talking back and forth with one another, that there's a bit of news, and we have to get to that news to lead off the show. Now, here's the thing, Randy. I kind of considered putting this news in the rundown, but to me, I don't really care. Now, of course, as you might have guessed from the lead-in, it is the North Carolina Tar Heels academic scandal. And here's the thing, Randy. Let me tell you why I just kind of shrug my shoulders at this point. Yes.
I don't think you're the only one, but go ahead.
Yeah. I know that this most recent report shows that this went on much longer and was much more widespread than people initially thought. I get that. The fact that now we're involving Dean Smith and not just, Rashad McCants and Raymond Felton. I get that. However, I already knew that UNC was pretty much a sham of an academic institution when it's come to their athletic department, that specific program, for the last however many years. Yeah. And I also know that it appears that the NCAA does not care whatsoever, because there's been plenty of evidence that has come out before. So at this point, it's a little bit more information, but it's not any new information that really changes how I feel about the school. And until the NCAA looks like it even has an inkling to maybe do something about this and maybe punish North Carolina, I just can't get that worked up about it at this point, Randy.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I think a lot of people are tired of these scandals, right? And it's just like, hey, great, another school that's sold themselves completely out at the altar of sports and athletics and the concept of student athletes. What time is the game on, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What time do the Heels play, right? I mean, nobody cares. The media cares a lot. We care a lot because we're sort of in the media, I guess, and we're going to talk about it. But most people have gotten inured to this because it is such a hypocritical system. The NCAA, as you noted, probably isn't going to do anything, and what they will do will be around the edges. They've had time. They've had information. They could have talked to Rashad McCants. They could have talked to anybody over the past, generation that this has been going on,
right,
Shane.
Exactly.
I mean, there are student athletes, quote unquote, student athletes on the Tar Heel team right now. This was going on before they were born.
Yeah.
Right?
Could be their parents.
1993. Yeah. 1993. I mean, give me a break. And you're going to talk about, to me, the thing that's bothered me always about this one is Carolina has just had a reputation that they have very much put out there for years and years, that they have a certain way of doing things. They call it the Carolina way. Well, for me now, what this means is the Carolina way apparently means a shadow curriculum, so you can keep Rasheed Wallace, Julius Peppers, and Rashad McCants eligible. And, they told us it was only the football players for the first couple of investigations, and now it's, gone back to 93, and it's involving 50 of Dean Smith's players, and Guthridge and Doherty, which nobody cares about at all. Those years didn't even happen. And now
UNC
right?
wants to take those years off.
Yeah, they don't even care about those years. But you know what? They might have been happening when Larry Brown was there, back in the 60s at this point. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. I think the overarching point here, Shane, though, and you very much alluded to it, is people have lost interest in this stuff because they're assuming it's happening everywhere, and to what degree. And we've had Miami, and we've had Penn State, and we've had all of these horrible things going on with schools just doing things nobody could even imagine and putting it under the rug. And you turn right around and Bruce Pearl has a barbecue and he gets a show cause
Right,
for 5
exactly.
years.
Right.
Or someone like Kellen Sampson makes some phone calls and he can't even coach for 5 years in the NCAA. So it's completely hypocritical. I just want to see something change. And I think that's the thing that will make people care again, is if the NCAA figures it out that they have no credibility, none whatsoever, until they start changing things. But what's the likelihood of that happening, Shane? Yeah, well, it's you and I in a hotel room again. That's the likelihood, okay?
We might have to bring back the original Randy's Rant segment for this topic.
Did you like that one?
Yeah,
that's
good.
At least a solid 2 to 3 minutes. Okay.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, like you said, it's just I just don't trust that the NCAA is going to do anything, despite this mountain of evidence right in front of them.
They won't.
And while I care on an intellectual level that this is going on, if it's not affecting what's going on the court, and it's not really affecting my life in terms of I don't really care about North Carolina as a university, all right, I'm done. I'm over. Let's talk about Kentucky. Let's talk about UConn's title defense. Let's talk about Wisconsin. Let's talk about anything else that has to do with things going on in the court. And I mean, for the most part, basketball hasn't gotten sucked into as many of the ridiculous eligibility scandals in terms of off the court, off the field benefits like football has, because you got the football guys who have to stay there a certain amount of years when they're much more famous. Maybe that would happen if basketball players were forced to stay more than 1 year.
Right.
So, we don't have the autograph scandals quite as much in basketball. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be some scandals. But until anything happens on the court, I just can't care anymore at this point.
It's just it's the professionalization of college athletics in many ways, right? I mean, Ray Rice goes and does what he does, right? And everybody sees it and loses their mind. And then the next weekend, people are celebrating wearing Ray Rice jerseys at Ravens games. Yeah. I mean, and so they separate, as you said, they separate it. They say, I don't care what this guy does as long as he plays for my team. But it didn't used to quite be so much that way in college sports, because a lot of the people went to those schools and they took pride in that diploma.
I understand. Yeah. That's why for this specific one, though, I can't get as riled up right now, because to me, I already looked at it this way. We've had this evidence coming out like this. Again, not quite the same scope, but significant evidence coming out for 2-3 years now at this point,
yeah.
Andy? I mean, that's why in this specific instance, I do think it is a big deal. I mean, at the end of the day, the part of college basketball is college, as much as you want to, make fun of the student athlete type thing. But it's not a big deal to me, because this has already been out. Again, not the scope, but it's already been out. I can't get riled up all over again about something I already kind of thought.
No, and a lot of people are looking at it that way as well and thinking this is ancient history. They fixed the problems. But I got to tell you, the one thing that I do believe we will continue to talk about is the situation with Roy Williams. I mean, he brought over an academic advisor from Kansas who apparently brought up or at least communicated to Roy some of these issues. Roy said it concerned him. I mean, that's in the last few years, if you date back to his tenure in North Carolina. And this is the kind of turmoil-ish thing that could impact his team this year. If people are really coming after him, both in the media, he doesn't tolerate the media very well when they're challenging him, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
he
gets kind of crotchety. This could be an impact on this year's team, even though these guys apparently aren't taking the sham classes.
Yeah, possibly. I'm saying we've also seen things like this be a rallying point for teams. Sure. Oh, everyone's out to get us. It's us against the world, that kind of thing. So I'm not going to say quite yet that it's going to cause a distraction for UNC. But Randy, that kind of leads us into the real basketball talk. And what I wanted to open up with is kind of the idea of narratives. And one narrative certainly around UNC is that this academic scandal is going to be a distraction. Or, conversely, if they go on a big winning streak to start the season, the narrative will be that they've used it as a rallying point. Like I said, that's the great thing about narratives. You can slice it however you want. However, lots of times going into a college basketball season, there's a narrative about the season as a whole. Last year, we had the really highly touted freshmen, Jabari Parker, Andrew Wiggins. We also had the established stars, Dougie McBuckets, Marcus Smart, all the Michigan guys coming back from that Final Four run, championship run. We've had years in the past few years when we've been doing this. Years when you had a lot of guys coming back. You had a lot of stud freshmen. And whatever the narrative for the season was, it kind of sets the tone for the entire year, what gets talked about over and over and over again in these weeks leading up to the first games of the season. Randy, what do you see as kind of the narrative, the overarching theme to this season in college basketball?
I had trouble thinking this one through. You're right. It feels a little different to me than last year. In terms of the returning guys versus everyone was just so excited about all of those incoming freshmen. I feel like maybe the year before, because Calipari had broken through with his one and done talent, the Anthony Davis, Kid Gilchrist crew, and there was a lot of hype sort of surrounding them as well. But for me, I just took a look through sort of where we ended up last year in the polls, and then the only preseason poll that's out so far is the USA Today coaches poll. And you look at it and you say, well, it feels like a lot of these teams lost a lot of talent, right? A lot of core players. So Louisville, they lost Russ Smith, National Player of the Year candidate. They lost Hancock. Kentucky loses their two best scorers in Randall and Young. Kansas lost their superstar freshmen in Wiggins and Embiid. Florida, your team, the Gators, the Final Four, they finally break through. All 4 of the 5 starters were seniors and are now gone. Arizona, everybody thinks they're going to be awesome this year. Loses Aaron Gordon to the draft. Nick Johnson, Player of the Year in the Pac-12. Duke loses Hood and Parker. So you've got a bunch of these teams in like the top 8 or 9 in the coaches poll, and it's probably not going to be much different in the AP or our poll when we put it out.
Yeah,
but that's 6 teams that in some cases have reloaded, and in some cases had guys on the bench. In some cases, maybe it's the same guys a year better. But the talent pool, we all recognize that those programs are just cycling talent year after year, right? And so that's why they're back in that top 10. So it kind of feels like they're really different teams, but they're still going to rise to the top based on the talent they have available to them. Some freshmen and some other things like guys getting better. But I feel like looking at this season as a whole, the team that's going to win the title is fairly wide open still, because the talent pool remains concentrated among those core teams. The last time I thought there was really a prohibitive favorite, a team that something really had to go wrong for them to lose the title, was probably the 2009 Carolina team that brought back pretty much everyone, including Hansbrough and Ty Lawson. And then even before that, the Florida team that came and went back to back. Those were the 2 where I really thought these are prohibitive favorites, and it wasn't as wide open. It's been pretty much wide open since then.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I think maybe what we're getting at here, maybe the theme for this year is which teams can maybe at least at the beginning of the season most quickly react to the big players that they lost, or which players. Obviously we have the freshmen. We have the Jahlil Okafors of the world, definitely highly touted, definitely, Karl Towns in Kentucky, all the Kentucky guys. We got a lot of hype. You'll always have hyped freshmen in the way that college basketball is currently constituted. But which other players kind of step into the void of a huge college basketball star? Is Karis LeVert going to be Russ Smith? Something like that. Which guys are going to take the next step? Is Frank Kaminsky going to be Doug McDermott? Just trying to think of random players. But which guys are going to step up here? I think that's kind of the thing that's going to interest me from an overarching theme going through this season.
And I feel like the last few years, in large part because of these programs that are cycling through really 1 to 2 year players, right? So many, I named them all basically. And then you've got a different group, and we talked a lot about that group last year in terms of the polls, because they were the ones like Wichita, who was undefeated in the regular season and their conference tournament. Virginia, they're not building themselves off of 1 and 2 year players. Wisconsin got basically everybody back from a Final Four team. They're doing it in a different way because they can't do it the other way, right? They don't have the capacity to get those level of recruits, but they're very good teams. It just seems like in that top 10 or 12 teams nowadays, you've got kind of that group of core teams with sick talent but they're going to be gone next year. And then you've got this other group that's really good talent that knows how to play together really well. And my question becomes then, will one of those teams be able to break through to win the title?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And speaking of title contention, who's going to break through to win the title? Last year around this time, we were talking about a top 4, if I remember correctly, of teams that we really thought could win the title.
Certainly, we had Connecticut, right? Both of
yeah,
us, I think so.
You did. I'll say this again. You did like Connecticut. Not quite in that tier though.
They were 8th in my poll.
Yeah, which was much higher than most. So again, I'll give you credit there. But we kind of really looked at, what was it? Kentucky, Duke,
Louisville,
Arizona, and Louisville. Was that?
I think I'm sure about Louisville because I had them number 1, Kentucky 2, and probably Duke 3.
Anyways,
maybe
but
Kansas.
that was kind of the 3, 4, 5 whatever teams that we looked at as the top tier. Sometimes it's 1 team, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 8. How many teams do you kind of have? Obviously we know at this point anyone could rise up and win the title. But when you're looking at true title contenders that right now, before one ball is, put up in the air for this season, teams that you're like, all right, I feel comfortable saying they're going to be a Final Four team. They're going to be a national championship contender. How many teams do you kind of have in that conversation?
Yeah, again, looking at the only poll that's been out yet, at the top of the USA Today poll, I really see a cutoff about at the number 10 spot. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm not necessarily saying that all 10 of those teams would be in my group to win the title, because a couple of them I don't think have the coaching chops, or for other various reasons, wouldn't happen. I think they might have the talent, but there's other reasons that I don't think they would. So I've really got 8 teams. And that's a lot, as you said. We might have had 4.
All right, you could run down the 8, but before you even get into the 8, I need to know the 2 that you eliminated for whatever those other reasons are. That's now more interesting than the 8 to me.
All right, so again, using the USA Today, Texas is one of my 2, because I do not believe Rick Barnes will win a title in his career. Fair. And Virginia is number 8 in that poll, and I think they're fantastic at what they do. I don't know that Tony Bennett's system or his level of talent would be able to cut down the nets. I think both those teams can get to a Final Four. I would say 30 teams could get to a Final Four this year at this point. I mean, beyond the top 25. It's just a lot different to win the title. We've talked about this extensively. So Kentucky, Kansas, Louisville, Carolina, Florida, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Duke are the 8, I believe, that are going to be in that running to win the championship. And you know why? We've talked about it so many times. I just believe at the end of the day, to win the title, you have to have an NBA-level playmaker who goes and gets you buckets. Somebody like Aaron Harrison, who can come down in pressure situations, create a ridiculous shot from 25 feet, and drain it 2 games in a row.
And we certainly know he can do that.
Those kinds of players are the guys that end up winning national championships.
That's fair. I think for me, looking at it, I agree. I'm going to be with you. A little skepticism towards Virginia, and if they can do it with that style of play. I mean, we've seen. Listen, it's a similar style as Wisconsin, going back to the Wisconsin and Tony Bennett connection. And we've seen Bo Ryan, he's been there year in, year out, but until last year he hadn't reached the Final Four, and he still hasn't, reached the mountaintop and won it all. So there's definitely good reason for some skepticism on that front with the style of play. Also with you on Texas, that's not going to be something that we're going to.
And they're loaded. They have great talent.
Yeah.
I just don't trust Rick Barnes.
Yeah, no. That's not going to be a team we fight about this year. At least if that's what you're saying, that's what I'm saying. We're not arguing. So let's start running down the 8 teams that you do like.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe I'll run down a team. You give me a line or 2 that you like about the team. We'll start with the obvious, Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, loaded with talent. I love their size and athleticism. It was really obvious to me in the Michigan game last year, which was a pretty athletic team in its own right, but had no size. They were just going up, grabbing the ball off the backboard and dunk it. That was the offense. Throw it up, grab it off the backboard, dunk it. They're going to win a lot of games on that alone.
All right, Arizona,
I think they could potentially be the best team in the country throughout the regular season, and whether that translates to winning it all, you never know. But they were, in my opinion, they were probably the best team in the country with Brandon Ashley last year. He's back, and they're adding some great talent in Stanley Johnson and a lot of other good players coming back. I think this might be their year.
Duke.
Little bit troubled by them. I mean, I can't argue with the talent, but I think they might be setting themselves up for a little bit of a freshman versus upperclassman rift this year. Still love their talent. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. I want to get a little bit more into Duke here, actually.
Okay.
Just for a second, we'll derail this quick hitter segment. With Duke, Jahlil Okafor, I'm very fascinated by him for this year, and I'll tell you why. We've seen lots of talented freshmen. It's tough, I think, lots of times for big men to come in and dominate right away. A back-to-the-basket player. I mean, first of all, you don't see them in college all that often because they don't exist all that often, and they haven't had to go to college for very many years. You know, maybe Dwight Howard would have been one. We don't know. I mean, it's very interesting because, one, it's tough to get used to playing guys that are just as big as you, just as strong as you. I mean, that's kind of the easy answer, easy reason. I mean, also, usually these guards are not used to playing with a dominant back-to-the-basket big man. They're not used to feeding a guy in the post all game long. I mean, the way college basketball has gone, it's a lot about the three. It's a lot of up and down. It's a lot of pressing style. So there's a big adjustment, I think, for both the individual player who's playing down on the low block as a freshman, and also his teammates to get him involved. I'm not saying Jahlil Okafor isn't going to be great this year. By all accounts, he is. But I'm very interested to see how quick the transition is for both him and for his teammates at Duke.
Yeah, if you read what Brad Jenkins wrote on the ACC microsite earlier this week, he had the opportunity to go to a closed session practice at Duke with a group of media, and he reported back that the freshmen were clearly the best players on the team, and that Rashid Suleiman and Quinn Cook were complete disasters, in fact, at least in that one practice. And I feel like they're probably feeling a little bit like maybe to a lesser extent when the Fab Five showed up at Michigan, right? These guys are coming in, including Justice Winslow,
right.
and kind of dominating things. And it's like, where's my role on this team now? As far as those upperclassmen are concerned. And traditionally, Coach K has put a lot of faith in his upperclassmen to lead. I just don't know if I see it from these guys. The other thought I have here is, name me the last time Coach K had a legitimate back to post player that became a featured point of his offense. I mean, name it to me.
I agree, although I'll say, because I was thinking that, but to be fair, and I never thought this would happen, but to be fair, by the end, Mason Plumlee had developed into a pretty reliable post player, but that's about the extent of it, within the last, 7 years maybe for Duke.
Yeah.
And that took 4 years.
And Sheldon Williams, I think he was a 3-year guy, and he was solid. He was more of a defender, I think, than a post player.
That was a while ago now, though.
Boozer had some game in that, but they were always those teams that you're talking about. It was still always an outside in attack, right? And they were considered. Elton Brand was probably the last real superstar back to their basket big man that Coach K had, and the teams that Elton Brand was on were absolutely loaded at every position. So I don't know. I'm not convinced that Duke is going to be able to have a freshman-led team take them very far. I like their talent a lot, but I do think they're setting themselves up for some issues this year.
All right, let's keep rolling through. I derailed this there. Wisconsin.
Well, of course. I mean, I think if Wisconsin had Duke on the front of their jerseys, they'd be preseason number one on pretty much everyone's list.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're bringing back almost everybody. They clearly, we talked about it a lot last year. This isn't your grandfather's Wisconsin Badgers.
Right.
The distinction is these guys knew how to play offense.
Yeah, they could score.
Actually, they needed to be better at defense. That was the problem last year.
Yeah, right.
So if they can shore that up and keep the offense where it was, you're looking at a fantastic team this year, and they were already really good last year. I expect Kaminsky to be a load underneath and Sam Decker to make the leap this year. I think that this team could be really, really a lot of trouble for a lot of teams.
All right, Kansas,
another team that I'm maybe looking at the talent they have available and saying, I can't not put them in my grouping of 8.
Yeah.
But I want to see how it works out before I buy in. I mean, they certainly let me down last year. I'm going to blame that on Embiid's injury. But even before that, Shane, they were never dominant. They were never the team that I think we thought they could be. And dating all the way back to the San Diego State loss in Allen Fieldhouse. So I'm hesitant, maybe not as much as Duke. I love their talent. But I think because of the talent alone, I'm going to keep them in my 8.
Yeah. Plus, in Bill Self we trust.
Yeah.
UNC.
As long as he doesn't play a mid-major. Or Stanford.
Or wear a Andrew Wiggins suit jacket like he did on Midnight Madness. That was
horrible.
UNC. We talked about him obviously a little off the court. What about on the court?
Yeah, I have a lot of reservations about these guys, notwithstanding the academic issues and possible turmoil with Roy, but great talent, great size, probably as good a size or better than anybody in the country, including Kentucky. But can they shoot the basketball? Can anybody make a 3 on this team? If they find a couple guys who do, maybe some of these incoming freshmen or, heck, just roll somebody out from the intramural leagues, they should be pretty good again. Talent alone is making me keep them in the group. I'm not convinced they're a top 5 team, though, at this point.
Next up in the coaches poll, and you didn't exclude them, so I'm very interested to hear about this. Florida.
Gators, lost a lot, right? But you know what, Shane?
But they lost all the guys that you hate, so now you're
they lost all
open arms.
All the garbage players are gone. Now the good ones can play. I'm gonna. You know what? Make sure you double record my next statement, okay?
You're clearly struggling to spit it out because I think I know what's coming here.
Yeah, I am going to eat my words on this one, but I think this team could actually end up being better than last year's team. Now, how can I say that? They rolled through the SEC. Was it 19-0 last year? And they only dropped 3 games. Is that right? Number 1 seed.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Number 1, maybe number 2 going into the tournament. What I mean by that, don't hold the record against me, okay? Yeah. What I mean by that is I think that their upside. I never thought last year's team could win the title. I think this year's team has the talent to win the title. And they may end up with more losses versus last year's team, and they may not have as high of a seed as last year's team, but I think they can go further. That's why I've got them in my list. Did I cover all bases on that, Shane?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I did.
You covered yourself. You covered yourself there.
Yeah.
All right. And then, obviously, Virginia, we mentioned. Louisville is at number 9 in the coaches poll.
Yeah, Montrezl Harrell coming back was big. Big. Because he shores up the front line, even though he's only about 6'6", 6'7". He's just a monster inside, the Corliss Williamson type from back in the day. And he's going to be a lot better because he did come back. And the Pitino guys always improve in that way. They understand how to get better over at Louisville. So I like him. Terry Rozier is probably going to make a leap this year as well. And then you throw in a Chris Jones and some of these other random parts they always have. I think they're going to be just fine.
All right. So that's your 8 right there.
That's
right?
my 8.
All right.
Yep.
The first one that we haven't talked about is the team that stole our hearts last year, Wichita State. Obviously lost Clay Anthony early, lost Big Wiggins, but they still have Van Vliet back. They still have Ron Baker back. They still got a lot of the pieces that took them to an undefeated regular season and up until the NCAA tournament last year. So you're not back on full on with the Shockers as a potential national champion this year.
No, they're going to be a great team again. And, Clay Anthony early almost in that Kentucky game made me eat my words on did they have a playmaker or not that could lead them to a title. I mean, who knows? Maybe they get past them, Louisville and Michigan, and they're in there. This is one of those things, though, Shane. I mean, he was a great player, but he wasn't the whole team.
Right.
I mean, Ron Baker, you didn't mention him. I mean, they got a lot of guys coming back, and Greg Marshall's still on the sideline, and they're 11th in the coaches poll. I feel like had they won that Kentucky game and maybe gone even just one more round, we would see them up in the 5, 6, 7 range. But for some reason, they were 11th in the coaches poll. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with that loss that they took, which was exceptionally close as well.
Well, that leads me into my next point, Randy. Every year there's a team, usually one way, usually one the other way, that either overachieved or underachieved in the NCAA tournament, and it completely skews everything that happened for the 4 months prior when we talk about how good they're going to be going into the next coming season. We talked about it a lot a couple years ago with NC State when they made their surprising Sweet 16 run when they were in as, an 11 or 12 seed. Everyone had them up in their top 5, top 10. We were still the team that barely made the NCAA tournament.
I'm glad you remember this stuff, man, because I can't remember what I had for breakfast today.
I can't remember that. All I remember is college basketball narratives and things that we talked about in the podcast.
Okay. It's good that you're listening, though.
Yeah, I go back and edit it, so I listen. That's why I remember all this stuff.
Yep.
So is there a team, one way or another, either a team that overachieved or underachieved in the NCAA tournament that you think is skewing the way people are looking at them heading into this year? You mentioned Wichita State a little bit. Is there another one that maybe pops out to you?
I mean, Kentucky is almost a unanimous number one in a lot of these polls, and I mean, they weren't that good of a team last year, Shane.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
People have really, really, really short memories. They lost, 10 games in the regular season, and Florida kind of ran away from them in that league, and it came down to one play in the Michigan game, one play in the Wisconsin game. This team isn't going to go 40-0 either, but last year's team wasn't even close.
Right.
So I put them in my group of 8. I'm not sure they're preseason number one or will be number one at the end of the year, but I think there's reasonable arguments to be had. They did lose. It's not like they brought back Randall and Young. Those guys are gone.
Right.
So, and the guys that they replaced them with, in my opinion, aren't as good as Randall and Young. This recruiting class isn't as good, period, and as a class as a whole, plus Kentucky's class. So you got to expect some guys will get better. Guys like Willie Cauley-Stein, knock on wood with him, you never know. And the Harrison guys. But this wasn't a great team last year, so I am concerned about them being sort of this unanimous. It feels a little bit like 2013 for me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think they're going to be good, but I think Kentucky is a good one. I mean, you talk about the Harrisons. Obviously, they were sensational in the tournament, and everyone assumes that was things clicking in for them. But what if it was just
shots?
What if it was just them getting hot for a few games? Because that's what happened.
That's exactly what it was.
I think there was a stretch in maybe late December, early January, where it looked like they had turned a corner, and Aaron was clicking on all cylinders. Mm-hmm. Andrew was clicking on all cylinders. It looked like they had turned a corner, and then everything kind of went downhill towards the middle of SEC play. So, I'm not saying they haven't turned a corner, but I'm kind of with you in the sense that let's not forget we had 4 months of evidence on the Harrisons that was very mixed, and it ended on a high note, but it could just be more back and forth, up and down play. I think another one for me is kind of cheating on this question a little bit, and that is SMU. Because here's the thing, SMU was easily the best team that didn't make the NCAA tournament last year. We know that they should have made the tournament. I mean, we talked about, they should have been in the tournament last year. Maybe if they steal a game or two, who knows how we're perceiving them this year. I think on top of that, everyone was ready to have them be the dark horse, trendy sleeper pick with Moutier heading into the season. Now, Moutier's gone. You don't have an NCAA tournament to look at. And, they've dropped back. They're everyone's down on them a little bit. Now, again, I say all this. Right now, Marcus Kennedy is maybe battling some eligibility issues. I think at the end of the day, I'm of the mind that until I see you miss an actual game of importance, I'm going to assume that you're going to be playing when it counts. So I'm working under the assumption that at the end of the day, Marcus Kennedy is going to be playing. He's going to be fine. But I feel like because of the Emmanuel Moutier, who never suited up for SMU, not coming to SMU, people almost went too far in the other direction, and now people are sleeping on them a little bit.
Yeah, maybe Chris Walker's the same at Florida. I mean, he's actually on campus as of yesterday, but we never know with him, right?
Right. Yeah. At least he's already missed games, but so maybe there's a little bit more reason for concern. Quick
thought on the Harrisons. I mean, they're not great shooters. They were both about 35% from three last year, which is a lot of that came up in the tournament, right? And James Young as well as a lot of those. They made a lot more threes during the postseason than they did during the regular season. I remember talking about some of the numbers on that, and to expect that that's going to be done for a complete year, I just don't. I'm not necessarily buying that. So unanimous number one, I don't think so. As far as another team, Shane, kind of the reverse way a little bit. And I'm not sure that I didn't put them in my group of 8, but I still think they're going to be really good this year. And they're getting almost no hype. I think the coaches poll had them down in the teens somewhere as Villanova.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the one I'm with you there too.
They were a number 2 seed last year, and they got bombed by Connecticut, right, in the NCAA second round. And I think that's what everybody remembers. But they were a really good team, and they're bringing back almost everybody from that group, and really should kind of run away with the Big East this year.
Yeah, absolutely with you. And again, I think the other thing with Villanova is that a lot of people, including us, to be fair, were skeptical about that going into this tournament, because they definitely earned the number 2 seed on paper, but with the wins that they had during the season, especially early in the season, Kansas, Iowa, what was that, the Battle for Atlantis, I believe. But so I think that's why people are even harsher on them for flaming out as the number 2 seed, because they were already a little skeptical. But I'm totally with you. People are sleeping on a team that was very accomplished last year and is bringing back most of the key pieces.
Yeah, one starter is graduated in James Bell, and the rest are back. So this is going to be a good team, and the Big East is just a quagmire this year. They should be able to run away with that league pretty easily and build up a pretty nice resume otherwise. Yeah,
does that almost hurt them, though? Because the same thing happened last year where the Big East behind them and Creighton was kind of a mess, and they lost both of the games pretty bad to Creighton, and then that was one of the bigger reasons why they had a couple months where they had only 2 marquee matchups, lost them both, and then it made them look worse. Is that almost a bad thing that the Big East is down? There's not, as of now, a team that looks to be a real competitor with them in the Big East. Does that almost hurt them a little bit in terms of national perception, that they're going to maybe play some big games early and then kind of fade away from the national discussion a little bit?
Yeah, no doubt about that, Shane. I mean, they're going to play in a New York tournament, one of the Brooklyn tournaments, VCU, and then Michigan, probably Michigan. Marginal top 25 teams there. But other than that, they've got a date with Illinois, a Temple game, a Syracuse game. None of those programs are elite top 10 teams this year. So I would suggest to you they need to win all of those in the non-conference to really get up into that top 10, and it won't hurt them as much. But if they drop 1 or 2 of those, the Big East schedule definitely will hurt them the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Everybody forget about them.
I'm with you. Speaking of conferences, let's get in a little conference discussion here. Which conference is the best? Is it going to be the ACC as they swap out Maryland, swap in Louisville, which I'm sad to say is a huge upgrade for basketball in that league? So is that the best conference this year? And then is that the conference you're most excited about this season? Because those can be 2 different things.
Yeah, 2 different things. The ACC is weird, right? I mean, at the top, there's no doubt about it. They've got 4 potential top 10 teams in Louisville, Duke, Carolina, and Virginia. I mean, it might be like the SEC West in football at some point. They could get like 4 of the top 5 with that group, depending on how the opening part of the season shakes out. You throw in a Syracuse, you throw in a Pitt, somebody else will bubble up. I don't know who it'll be, but a couple more teams will probably be decent. So that's, a solid 7, maybe 8 teams of 15 is the problem. You could have so much garbage still at the bottom that it could skew the league in some ways. The league I'd keep an eye on this year, maybe again, is the Big 12. I mean, you only have 10 teams to deal with, and you've got the disaster, of Texas Tech and TCU down there at the bottom. But you've got pretty good depth. You've got Kansas, Oklahoma should be good again. We know Iowa State's going to have the Hilton Magic going. K-State has a lot coming back. We mentioned Texas with a good amount of talent. That's 5 really solid teams that should hover in the top 25. That's half your league all year. So. And Baylor, Baylor is Baylor. We all know Scott Drew is going to have something up his sleeve. And I'm going to say, watch out for West Virginia a little bit this year. Bob Huggins has been a little bit too quiet for too long, and he's due to make some noise. So that could be even 6, as many as 7 solid teams out of a 10-team league.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, West Virginia's got a big-time player in state, and so yeah, I like that call. Yeah. Big 12, maybe one of the more intriguing teams. When we go from going conferences on the big picture to players on the more macro scale, one guy, Randy, that you are very excited to watch this season. It could be a freshman. It could be a returning guy. It could be that you already know you love to watch. It could be a returning guy that you expect to make a big jump this year. Is there one guy that you cannot wait to play basketball in the 2014-2015 season?
Emmanuel Mudiay. No.
You'll be illegally streaming games from China?
In case the listeners were wondering, and I know they are, and you are as well, Shane, I'm sure, Mudiay had 18 points in his first game in China the other night, and he was 5 for 21. He was Shane Connolly-like from the field. He was chucking up threes, twos, everything under. It was like 1 out of 4 went down, but you know what? He got his 18, so that's what's important. Yeah, the research on the Chinese leagues, I would have liked to have seen him play, and just to see how dominant he could have been. Nevertheless, that's not the question that was posed. So the guy I really am excited to see this year, it's not like last year. We talked about that. I mean, you could have chosen any of a number of those freshmen, and just to watch to see how good they could be, that was exciting to me. But so I'm going to go with another freshman, but it's not to the same level of last year. It's going to be Stanley Johnson down at Arizona. And mainly, I mean, he's a high flyer and he's athletic and all that, but probably no more nor less than a lot of other guys, certainly not like an Andrew Wiggins. But what I want to see is whether he can pick up the production that they lost with losing Nick Johnson and Aaron Gordon. And if he can, I'm not going to say he has to do it all, but if other guys can elevate, and if he can come in seamlessly and be as good as people think he can be, then that's going to probably, in my mind, propel Arizona to the number 1 spot in the team to beat in college basketball this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Arizona's got a bunch of good guys. I mean, you know, I was very big on Rondé Hollis Jefferson last year, and obviously Hill also. I mean, that's kind of the thing.
Good reason.
I mean, there's a few guys that could fill the void of Nick Johnson and Aaron Gordon this year. Who is going to really take that mantle for Arizona remains to be seen. Whoever does probably ends up being a first-team All-American or a second-team All-American, assuming someone does. Maybe no one does. Maybe it's a disappointing season for the Wildcats. If, you know, Stanley Johnson and Hollis Jefferson are dominant players, then maybe they're the number 1 team in the country this year. So I think, you know, those kind of guys are very interesting to watch. I mean, I think for me, players to watch, obviously, you know, guys, and we'll do this list again probably towards the end of November. Last year, we put, you know, the nation on alert for Zach LaVine was one of the guys we highlighted as one of our favorite players to watch. And, of course, now the rest of the country, now he's in the NBA and, you know, putting on a couple highlight dunks is, you know, the rest of the world is catching on a little bit. But one of the guys that we highlighted last year as a favorite guy to watch, Georges Niang, you know, a lot more will be on him this year with Big Daddy Kane, your boy,
Big Daddy.
Edgeo. No longer there, so we'll see what Niang can do. But I think one of the guys that I'm really, and this kind of leads us into the next one, one of the guys I'm really excited to watch this year is Nigel Hayes on Wisconsin, because he was a beast in spurts for Wisconsin. I mean, everyone talks about Kaminsky, everyone talks about Decker for good reason. Those are their best 2 players, without a doubt. Not trying to say otherwise. Those 2 are great. The fact that they're both back is huge for the Badgers. But I think Hayes might be the key between them being very, very, very good this year and them being a great team this year. Because if he reaches the full potential that we saw in spurts last year over a bigger amount of minutes, I think that could really raise them up a notch and put them among the elite teams in the country and maybe at the top of that group.
Yeah, hopefully Nigel he was a freshman last year, came in a little portly. Hopefully he's got enough the Shane Twinkie diet and he's gotten himself on the treadmill a little bit, got a little more capacity for staying on the court. But I agree with you. I think he is a very key piece to what they're trying to do in that front court with Kaminsky and Hayes. That could be nasty. That could be nasty.
And so what I was going to say, Randy, is that's kind of transitioning into the next thing that I want to kind of wrap up on, and this is still a little early in the college basketball preview cycle. We'll get a lot more. You know, some of it's already started to come out, but as you mentioned, the coaches poll has come out, not the AP poll. The Blue Ribbon book is, of course, out. I know CBS is starting to roll out some of their stuff, but certainly everything is not out yet. A lot more across all the media, different outlets, of course, on our site will be coming out over the next few weeks. This is our chance, Randy, as we're still pretty early, to kind of plant your flag into a statement. Plant your flag into a player, a team, whatever it is, and then no one can say you're hopping on a bandwagon. No one can say you're hopping on a trendy team. We're going to do this early, so I'm claiming Nigel Hayes as my guy this year, Randy. Before everyone starts talking him up over the next couple weeks, he's my guy.
I love that pick, Shane, and maybe that's I'm going to have to steal that from you and claim it by the end of the season.
Well, that's why I'm doing it, and I went first, Randy. You can't steal that from me.
Good call. Good. We've been doing this a while. You know how to do that well. I want to make a claim that is going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind, Shane, and all the listeners.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because this is my claim. You better call Norlander. Wichita is going to run the regular season table again. Again. I'm telling you, they are going to do it again. And I'm going to tell you why. Because their schedule is even easier this year than it was last year. And if you look at it carefully, you realize their toughest game, Shane, is on the 24 Hours of Madness in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 1 p.m. This is going to make or break it. Tuesday, November 18, 1 p.m. Central Time, they're going to play Memphis in Sioux Falls. Memphis has got, they're going to be a lot better at the end of the year than they probably are at the beginning of the year. But that's their toughest non-conference game, in my opinion. They do have to go to Utah.
I was going to highlight that one.
All right. Well, Utah's picked second in the pack, but they're going to beat the Utes because they're not ready for prime time yet. And then they got to play some teams in the Diamond Head, possibly Nebraska.
Nebraska's good.
Yeah, they are. But I'm telling you, they're going to run it again. That's my claim right here. They're going to do it 2 years in a row.
Wow. Are they going to go through Arch Madness as well again?
Well, you give a guy an inch and he takes a mile.
Listen, I just want you on. I just want to know how far we're going here.
I'm not willing to. That wasn't the claim.
Okay,
I'm making the regular season claim.
Listen, I just wanted a clarification if it was just the regular season or if you're going all the way, because I remember that was part of that.
It was part of the Norlander deal. You're right.
And there was a little bit of a confusion. Some people only thought it was regular season, and we had to inform them. No, it includes Arch Madness as well. So now for you for this year, I just wanted to get everything clear, everything out in the open. Regular season, you're saying in Wichita. Shockers, shocking them, going all the way through the regular season.
Regular season, that's my claim. They're going to go undefeated all the way up to Arch Madness. I'm not willing to give them Arch Madness just yet.
Have you told Norlander about this yet?
No, no, I just came up with it, Shane. It just
I didn't
talked about this
know.
Today. I haven't been sitting on this all summer. The schedule just came out.
You told me right before we started that you had been sitting on a lot of things. You had a lot of things to get off your chest for the summer, so maybe I thought this was one of them.
That's true. You're right. I do have a lot of things to get off my chest, but this wasn't one of them. I did talk to Norlander about doing another bet, and he was very quick to respond. And it wasn't about this. It was just about another bet in general. He's very quick to respond that he had learned his lesson. And no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. So we need to find another another sucker this year that'll get in on that. But no, Wichita, Shane, look at that schedule. Look at that schedule, man. Nebraska,
I see some tricky games.
Utah, and Memphis. That's the three. And I don't think it's as tough as it was last year.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll see. Hey, what about Seton Hall? They have an influx of talent this year. I know it's in Wichita, but that could be a tough game.
Shane, don't embarrass yourself. What's going to happen here is they're going to lose the Northwood, Florida exhibition
I know,
game.
And then that's going to be a big controversy whether it counts or not. It's exhibition.
Yeah, and then they're going to turn around and run the table the rest of the way, all the way up to Arch Madness.
Fair enough. All right. Well, Randy, let's just get some housekeeping stuff before we wrap up. One, we're going to keep doing T-shirt giveaways this year. I didn't do it during this show. We're going to do it at the end here. We talked a lot about Kentucky, the players that are coming back. They have some experience coming back in the Harrisons. How good the Harrisons are going to be this year remains to be seen. But they don't have a lot of seniors. They have 3 seniors. I believe all of them are walk-ons. Maybe one has gotten a scholarship or two along the way. But one of their seniors has a very famous name. A famous name because it was a famous television character. Tweet at either Randy, at Rush the Court, or to myself, at SConnolly114, the name of the Kentucky senior with a famous name, and you will win yourself a free Rush the Court t-shirt. You like that one, Randy?
I love it. I love it. It took me a while to think of it, but actually that's not true at all. You had to tell me.
Yes.
But
but it took you a while, and then
It took me a while. I was perplexed for a bit because it's not someone you're going to find at the top of their roster. That's for sure.
No, it is not. So look that up. Take the time, figure it out. Tweet at Randy, tweet at myself. Win yourself a free Rush the Court T-shirt.
Yeah, we'll give it to the first two. We're not going to give it to everybody.
There you go. Randy, other stuff coming up on the site. And I know we're trying to do a few different things this year. What is coming up on the site this year as we're rolling out the preseason stuff on rushthecourt.net?
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of great stuff that's already been active this week. Most of the microsites are up and running. Previews of mostly the bad teams are kind of publishing this week and next, and then we'll move into the better teams. Most microsites are doing it kind of worst to first sort of thing.
So those Maryland and Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Probably up
Exactly. We've got some Twitter must follow lists coming out. We had Big Ten come out recently. That was pretty exciting. And then we're also doing, like I said before on the previous pod, some stuff with the YouTube channel. And I encourage everybody to check it out. There's stuff involving the Morning Fives. There's interesting things from media days on there. Brendan Mulvihill's doing a great job with that. And he's even doing, Shane? He's even putting this thing on there. But thankfully, neither of our faces. It's only audio. Okay,
yeah, we should.
Neither of our faces, which are definitely for radio, are going on YouTube. Although we may be doing some Google Hangouts in the near future, Shane, as well.
So we'll see. We got a lot of good stuff coming up on the podcast audio form only, not on YouTube. Although we certainly encourage you, if it's easiest, go ahead, listen on YouTube. Just hit play, then minimize the browser, whatever, let it roll. On iTunes, definitely subscribe to the podcast. It's the easiest way. You'll get it right away as soon as I put it up after it's edited. It might be even a little before it gets posted on the website. Which, if you're trying to win yourself a free Rush the Court T-shirt, definitely gives you the inside track to do so. Be one of those first people to tweet at either Randy or myself. So subscribe on iTunes. If you previously subscribed, you might need to refresh the subscription in order to make sure it works. I had to do that myself on my iTunes, my podcast app, because it had been a little while since the end of the college basketball season. So do that. Tell a friend. Also, I hate to be the guy that begs for reviews and ratings, but please, if you don't mind, if you enjoy the show, rate and review us on iTunes. It helps in terms of the visibility of the podcast and letting more people know about the podcast, which we're trying to do here, Randy, as we ramp up towards the college basketball season.
No, I appreciate that you had your girlfriend and your parents and grandparents and uncles and cousins all
Randy,
all
if
give us
you
a
think
like.
my grandparents can navigate iTunes, you are out of your mind.
All you have to do, Shane, is sign them up, and then you can go over there, hang out, and get some brownies, and then click on the thing. No, we do appreciate everybody who's given us good feedback.
Definitely. All right, so there you go. Tweet at Randy and I, the famous Kentucky Wildcat senior, or the guy with the famous name, I should say. Him himself probably not that famous, even in Lexington, where every basketball player is famous. But tweet that to Randy at Rush the Court. Tweet that to me. And, of course, read all the great content for the preseason at rushthecourt.net. It's a blog.